Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self care movies. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're glad to have you. We are on episode 61. I'm Jay Watson,
And I'm Cathy Castle.
and Kathy and I are going to be talking about negative self talk, something that we are all guilty of at some point. We all have a tendency to talk negatively to ourselves more often than we do positively. So, we're going to talk about maybe why we do that and maybe some tricks and tools to make it a little bit easier to be more kind in how we talk to each other and how we treat ourselves in our mindset. But before we get into that, it's been a little bit of time since we've done a check in. So what's been going on with the Castle?
Well, this is the this is the time of year where we're completely in the weeds in the castle. A lot of we talked about this in our house. Lots of things ending, lots of things starting. Been doing a lot of outside work, so it feels like it's just I personally feel like I'm in a hamster wheel. I'm in the hamster wheel. I'm in it. It's going fast.
Yeah,
So we did but we did sneak in a couple self care things for the weekend. I did get to go to a movie, which we'll talk about later, and I
yeah,
did go to an Oriole game.
yeah.
So,
I don't know if I would admit that I went to an Oriole game these days.
oh, yeah, it was good until it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
And both times I've gone to an Oriole game this year, it's been a giveaway,
Yeah,
and there's so many people you don't get the giveaway. I mean,
haven't they lost both times?
yeah.
And didn't they lose last year when you went in the playoffs too?
Is it me?
Yeah, you need to stop going, man. Of course, there's been a lot of other games this year that you didn't go, and they still lost. So,
Yeah, yeah. Darn birds. Anyway.
and Dylan's just about done baseball, so
Oh my
your
goodness.
youngest is about to be done. So the Castles are going to be, no more baseball fields unless
I don't know what to do
unless
without that dirt.
unless grandkids down the road start playing, then you'll be back on baseball fields again.
I didn't think that how much I would miss dirt. I'm gonna miss dirt.
Yeah,
You know, I've
it's really
complained
beautiful.
about it. It's been hot. It's been cold. It's taken away my summer vacation. It's taken my money. As much as I've complained about baseball over the years, oh my goodness, I am so sad that it's going to be
Yeah,
over. It's weird. That's been our life, and it's
yeah.
just been
You're
fun about
you're you're about to get into a real transition phase with a couple of your kids. Like I say, Dylan, one of them, he's going to be there's
it. And
no more baseball, and then
I'm
you got
probably not okay. I'm probably not okay.
of course.
We probably need a transition podcast one day.
We'll
I
have to have
need
a whole series on that one.
woo. Yeah.
It's look, I'm not a parent, so I can only intellectualize that whole
You
thing. But
know, yeah.
I can imagine it's anytime we've been in whatever we do for however old Brennan is, if you're 20 some years, and then all of a sudden that dynamic changes, it's a transition. I don't care who you are, it
It's
just
weird,
is.
right?
Yeah,
So I don't know. I might be driving a struggle bus some days, but
yeah. But he'll still be local, and I'm sure
there.
he'll probably be over at your house almost as much as he is now.
Oh, Brennan, yeah.
For whatever reason. So, um, yeah, it might be one of those cases where it's a slow transition in everyday practical things. He may not sleep there, but in a lot of other ways, it will probably be a lot the same as it is now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just weird.
So, yeah.
How about you? What's your week look like
Yeah,
besides
yeah,
being so
it's
busy?
been. I tell you, these last couple Mondays, we've talked about before. Mondays at work for me are like so
Oh
busy.
yeah.
Today
Still, this
was
was another one of those Mondays?
another one of those Mondays. It was,
Mhm.
and I like it because the day goes by quick. And again, I enjoy my job most days, so I don't, you know, I don't dread work at all. I'll get a customer every once in a while that just ruins the day, but beyond that, I enjoy my job.
Mhm.
But when you're super busy, like this Monday and the last couple Mondays have been crazy busy. I think last Monday I must have had 15 people walk in. Just walk in. It's not that's not including like phone calls and me going out to measure customers' houses, and that's a lot. Um, and the ones we've been doing are big jobs, which are always good. So, um, yeah, very big there. I'm back on my schedule of hitting church every other Sunday. I went yesterday. I debated it because it was pouring down raining as I was driving to church, and we've got a park so far away from where we walk into the building that I was like, man. But I sat in my car and waited for it to kind of slack off a little bit, and basically ran into the church. Um, Luckily, it stopped raining when I got out. So yeah, it was a good service. I still, it's funny. I used to think that I was the only one that liked to sit in the same spot every time at church, but I've discovered that there are a handful of other people that they may not sit in the exact same chair, but they like to sit in the same general area every time they come in. So those people are aware that I'm going to sit during the time when we're supposed to be talking to each other. So they kind of understand. They might wave or whatever, but they don't come over. So it's good that like that general area are regulars, and
This is my boundary. Do not cross.
but there's always somebody new that sits close by that doesn't know the rules of Jay Watson. And I'm not, I always shake their hand and I'm polite and all, but I don't. One would think that me sitting down while everyone else is standing up would be the pretty clear indicator that that's not for me, but it doesn't seem to stop anybody. Maybe I'll sit down and turn my back to everybody. That would just be too much, but yeah. So, but yeah, yeah, I had a very interesting movie experience Friday night. I texted you afterwards. It was, I really enjoyed the movie, and you really liked it a lot. Um, it hit home for me, and you've probably been scratching your head wondering, but it's once I say it to you, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it really got. I mean, it really
I think
resonated. It
I've got
resonated with
opinions
me.
of what I think hit you on that movie,
Yeah,
which we'll
and it,
talk
and
about
it,
in
and,
a
it, and
minute,
it's
right?
and it's in a good way because obviously I'm no longer in that headspace, but um, you know it was impactful for me, and it's we'll talk about it when we get to the end when we talk about the movies. But you
Without
really
giving it
like,
away.
yeah, you texted and said that both you and your boys have already all liked it. So yeah, it was a I would say it was a Marvel success because it's done well. Marvel's movies have not always lived up to Marvel standards. So
I'm I am ready to see more.
yeah,
Anytime you put Bucky in something, I'm in.
yeah.
I like Bucky.
And he was kind of. It was funny. Bucky was kind of like. Well, anyway, we'll get to it
All right, we'll talk later. We're
later.
getting excited about our movies.
But yeah, but anyway, what we want to talk about today, we've kind of touched on it along the way here and there in some episodes, and that's negative self-talk, and that's kind of the habit that we all have at one point or another that we have a negative mindset or negative thoughts about ourselves, or we feel lesser than just kind of not as positive as we should kind of go through life. We tend to have moments or times, all of us, where we just talk to ourselves in our own mind in a negative way, and that's not the healthy way to do it. So we're going to kind of dive into that, and yeah, that interestingly enough, that kind of ties into the movie. So
Well, yeah, and I
um,
mean, we have talked about this topic before, and in different ways. There's a lot of
yeah,
ways, and I think it's important because, you know, we've said this before. We have a negativity bias by nature that our brains are they're like Velcro to negativity and like Teflon to positivity. We really need to work on rewiring that habit in our brain. But, that's just the way we are, because we're by nature, we're trying to protect ourselves. So, the flight, freeze, fight, flight, or freeze response, when that amygdala hijack happens, we talked about that before too. That's a protective thing. So the negativity can tend to try to be a protective factor, but it really weighs us down. And I was thinking about two things in particular, and probably had to do with something I read or saw too. But just one was how we tend to, and today's Monday that we're taping, how we can go into a Monday just with those Monday blues, like, ugh, it's Monday. And poor Monday gets beat up. And then you add a little rain on that
Yeah.
Monday. And it's just like we make it these tragic, horrible days.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing was the Mondays. And another thing I was thinking about is aging. We really look down on it, like it's just horrible. Like we just drew the short stick. So I was thinking about both of those things, and how maybe we don't always categorize either one of those as negative thinking. Like we can say, I'm in a bad mood, or I feel like I'm being a little negative. Sorry, I'm a little negative today. Like sometimes I think, I work in an office with a lot of other people. We can we can pick up on that and we can tell everybody. And I guess that's a warning. Hey, it's not you. I'm in a way today.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I said, I was just thinking about those two things, aging and Mondays. And those are things we put a negative definition on both of those. And why do we do that? You know?
Yeah.
Why does Monday got to be a bad thing? Well, except if you're Jay Watson and you work by yourself, and Monday becomes nice because business comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, are our weekends that incredible that we're like, do like we just went down the drain, and now here we are at work. What is it on Mondays? Why do we do that?
Yeah. We talk ourselves into ahead of time that Monday is not, like you just said, it's not, we're not, if you're on a typical Monday to Friday work schedule, which a lot of folks are, if, what we're doing first thing Monday morning is not the things that we prefer to do on Saturday and Sunday. So from that aspect, it kind of makes some logical sense. But we hype it up into a bigger negative than what it, because really, is Monday any different than Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday? Not really. You're doing the same thing, but you know,
We weren't ready to flip the switch, maybe,
yeah.
but
But
I'm sure everybody's Saturday and Sunday and just absolutely amazing.
right,
Some people may have worked. Some people may have worked another job, or some people may have just had a crap weekend.
yeah.
But despite, we're still going to say Monday is doo doo doo.
You know, old Prince wrote that song for the Bangles, "Manic Monday."
Yeah, and yeah, how do where maybe we walk in and we have a lower energy or lower motivation and things like that
Yeah,
on Monday, like, oh, we got 5 days, or I guess that's what most people would have, or some people have 4 10 hours, whatever everybody's
yeah.
doing.
But again,
But
in reality, Tuesday's not any different. You're still not doing the things on Tuesday that you prefer to do on Saturdays. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like maybe that's just I'm a very like it's funny. I associate the days of the week. Each day of the week has a different um, identity to me.
hmm.
And it's not. They used to be like we're talking about. Like I used to dread Mondays. Um, I really don't anymore. But I used to dread Mondays for a lot of things that we just talked about. And then as the week went on, I used to love Fridays. At a previous job, I got off at lunchtime on Friday, so it was almost like I had 2.5 days of vacation. So that was always cool. But it's kind of like, and I still tend to have I have my gym evenings are identified that way. Like I don't, and work does not indicate my identity for the days of the week at all, because I don't like when Friday evening comes and I'm leaving work. I don't say, "Yay, I'm done work." I say, "Yay, I'm getting ready to go to the movie." I don't attach the work part of it at all, one way or the other, Monday through Friday. But I do attach, okay, the 5 or 6 days a week that I go to the gym, those are gym days, and they're specifically what I'm doing at the gym those days. Of course, Friday's identified as movie night, and you know, and that's probably because I tend to be so regimented with what I do those days. They become that identity to me. So I don't. I'm productive, or I try to be productive in some way, shape, or form, all 7 days. That's not. I don't always get to do that. It's not. I'm always not always successful at that.
Yeah, but you know what you just described? You carefully planned. You
Right.
planned your days.
Yes.
So
Well, not
instead
really
of
anymore. They're all the same. So it's just
so instead of
all
it's all work or it's all play,
right.
you have thoughtfully planned Monday's this, Tuesday might be this, and I'll add this.
Right.
So that's a really smart technique, and I like it. And the more I get to know you and think about your the movie Friday, the more I think that is one of the smartest things you could do.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about the movie thing,
And it was an accident.
but I like it. Like maybe I don't know. We live locally here in Easton, where there's a restaurant in town. For example, the Spaghetti House,
Hmm.
right? That's what it's called
Yep.
now. Yeah, and I know on Mondays they have these nice big takeout $11 pizzas. So, I don't do it all the time, but I'll say, all right, I'm going to reward myself as a busy working mom, and I'm going to get the cheap pizza from a really good place. I
Yeah.
mean, they have great quality food. I'm going to do that and reward myself on Monday, so I can ease in to the work, cooking,
Yeah.
whatever, by having a meal already made. But yeah, I like that. I like what you are saying. I think what you are saying is to have a nice, you give yourself things to look forward to.
Yeah. You have to be intentional about
Intentional is the word.
yes. And
I
well,
like that.
with the movie thing, as I've talked about before, I was accidentally intentional. I didn't. I did. It wasn't a planned thing. I didn't say, "Okay, Friday's going to be a self care thing for me. I'm going every Friday." It's not. It didn't start off like that. I just discovered. Now, I did intentionally say I'm going to the movies, but it was not a specifically for self care at the very beginning. I discovered I was I paid attention to how it made me feel driving to the theater, and I'm like, oh, there's more to this than just I'm enjoying a movie for 2 hours. It's bigger than that for me, anyway. So that's why it's such a, you know,
So I also have an article in front of me, surprise, surprise, from Forbes, and it's a couple years old, but um, I was trying to study up a little bit on work life balance. And then it occurred to me that it's no surprise. A lot of people, including myself, have really poor work life balance. And with that said, I really do think the Monday blues or the negative thinking, a lot of it is our struggle with this work life balance because for some reason, well, it's probably not rocket science. I mean, it's technology has made us always on. I don't know. Some people are probably better than others. I'm horrible. I'm always on. I'm answer. I might answer an email 11:30 at night. I'm constantly texting for work, but I allow myself to always be on. I haven't drawn that line very well, um, and in this article it goes on to say, what do you mean by work life balance? Like some people may think that it means you're given equal time to both things, work and your personal life, which this would say it doesn't really encourage that, this article. Or another definition was that you could be at work but also manage your personal life at the same time. And we've had this whole work from home thing after COVID, and this article really goes into a lot of things that would disagree with all that. That even like working at home does not. It might make it easier for you to throw some laundry in, or maybe you don't take a shower. Maybe you can cut some time and just start working first thing in the morning and take your shower later. But it's you're still working. It doesn't give
Yeah.
you. Somebody probably would argue with me on that, but this article did not feel like that was the answer to everything, working from home. Um, but we've allowed ourselves to be distracted all the time. We're answering the phone. I'm working in an office right now. I have two big glass windows, so people see me even if I have the door shut and they come in. But I've also allowed that as well. But it's hard to get rid of the distractions. We're all distracted a lot more than we used to. But I thought this was very interesting. You're gonna like this. This is where your movie stuff comes in. Um, that in order to so knowledge for us to have knowledge work, right, it depends on optimal brain functioning. So an optimal brain functioning depends on three things: physical well-being, emotional well-being, and creativity. But I want to talk more about creativity. So I thought that is very interesting, right? For your brain to be optimal, we know that we probably have to have our physical health in a decent way, meaning sleeping, eating decent, things like that. And emotionally, we can't just be on Cathy's struggle bus all the time either, right? We have to tame that down and self-regulate. But this creativity thing is very interesting. So this says, where is it? Hold on, I just lost it. I lost it, Jay. Here it is. I got it. So our neural pathways in our brain, if we are doing something all the time, it's routine, we're going to become decent at that, right? If we're doing a certain activity over and over again. But this is saying if you work all the time, that's not going to make you a well-balanced person. You need the off time. You need the best thing to help your brain is to have the off time. So, yeah, Monday maybe seems a little harsh on us, but we've got to not be on. We can't just always be on. And maybe if we're not living like that, then Monday won't be as bad. You know what I mean? So, like, this is saying we need other things. So we need different ideas, we need different data, we need different analysis, we need unique experiences, right? Which gets into the creative part. So the more creative things that we do, in addition to your work, you can be the workaholic, but you also need things. Guess what the first thing it says? Movies. Movies, Jay. Movies, television, books, travel, conversations, new sights, tastes, smells, experiences. So they're creating more neural pathways in our brain and making us have better optimal brain functioning.
Do you think that from a
Interesting though, right?
from a negative self talk aspect, do you think? Well, here's my thoughts on those people who we would possibly label as workaholics. And again, to be clear, there is certainly a um, I need to work hard to provide for my family. I need to work hard to get ahead in my career, and that's all great. But I do think that there is some negative self talk. And again, most of us have probably felt this way in that there are those that perhaps assign their only value to how
Yeah.
well they do at work.
Purpose. That's the purpose, right?
Yes, they feel like the only way I'm going to be accepted in my social circle, the only way I'm going to present to others as you know good is to be successful at my job. So therefore, I need to again the word balance is kind of key. And what I
Yeah,
tend to do,
I agree.
Kathy, with especially when it comes to the general idea of mindset and what we think about each other, is I tend to use an analogy or visualize a physical picture. And I like to visualize like a bicycle wheel or a wagon wheel, how you got this hub in the middle and all the spokes come out from that hub to the wheel. And let's just talk about use the wagon wheel as the picture. And the hub in the middle is kind of the foundation to the whole wheel. And for me, for the purpose of this conversation, the hub in the middle of the wagon wheel is how we think and feel about each other. So what happens there is then put out into the rest of the wheel, the rest of the world by all these spokes. We've talked about how we feel about ourselves impacts relationships, how we feel about ourselves impacts important decisions in our life. If the foundation of the hub of the wheel is negative, then you're as the sun rays, the spokes go out into the world, go out to the rest of the wheel, you're transferring that negativity or lack of positive mindset to everything you do. All the spokes, all the choices and decisions and parts of your life that are the spokes are affected by what's going on in the hub. If that makes sense.
Well, I'm looking at something right now. Negative thoughts can contribute to problems such as social anxiety, depression, stress, and low self. So I don't know why I can't talk today. Low self esteem. The key to changing your negative thoughts is to understand how you think now and use some strategies to make them less, prominent, I guess. So some people might think, I'll just stop. I just won't think about it. I'll just shove it under the rug kind of thing. But that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Right.
You
But
got to replace it with a positive. With a
yes,
consistent. Yep.
you're passing the tests, Jay. Replace, we talk about journaling all the time. You can call it
Yep.
whatever you want. Maybe you call it a diary, but the fact that when you write something down, you literally put a thought to paper is helpful. I mean, you don't have to have a dear diary or some kind of notes you're keeping for the rest of your freaking life, but just put something on paper. You can chunk it later, but
Yep.
what is this thought? What is it about? Even like Mondays, why am I wigged out today? What's going on? Why am I like that? Remember we talked before too about that HALT method. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired?
Tired.
Maybe
Yep.
you're tired on Monday. Maybe you had a banger on the weekend. Maybe you went to the Oriole game and got really depressed like me. But you need to identify what those negative thoughts are. What are they? Are you feeling like you're worthless? Are you feeling like you're in a situation you can't get out of? Or, why are you languishing? Yeah.
And I think, you know, we all have been guilty of it at some point in our lives, some more so or less so than others. But I think kind of, the easy kind of generic answer to why that happens is basically, like you said a minute ago, low self esteem, insecurity, and the whys behind that are going to be different from person to person. But where that ties into the self care we talk about all, which is kind of the basis of our podcast, is I feel like an important part of self care. Yes, there's let me do the things that I enjoy. Let me do the things that build and grow mind, body, and soul. And that's kind of the core. But I think an important part of self care is by, trying different things trying different self care things and maybe really, especially the creative ones, get back to creative again. Maybe you like to garden. So, or you like to paint or, with Cathy, there's probably some degree of creativity with you with your palm trees. Um, there's a sense of accomplishment when the creativity comes to fruition, whatever it is. And there's that part of self care that's also learning who you are by doing these different things and trying and accomplishing and you know kind of going through life by doing these things that are at the center of who you are. You're building upon your identity and you're building positive reinforcing moments and activities along the way. And when that happens, now you're less likely, as we've talked about a million times, you're less likely to seek validation and seek happiness from outside sources that we don't have. There's a long list of those. It's all your happiness is built from the inside out, and you know, so we tend not to, we're less likely to make poor decisions and decisions, whether it's relationships or jobs or substance or gambling or whatever the case may be. You've you've kind of built that hub of the wagon wheel strong. So now everything that comes out of that, every product out of that wagon wheel is much more positive. So everything that everywhere the spokes reach is now more positively impacted because the hub is more positive. And again, none of us have it all figured out. We all have moments, days,
Practice, right?
time.
I
Yeah,
mean, we got to practice it. It's not because we're going to naturally go back to, you know, things are not the way you want them, or things are bad, or
yeah.
I'm not performing
Even
the way
if
I want.
even if the familiar is negative, we tend to go back to the familiar than
Yeah.
to try what could be positive. The negative is more familiar, so let's go back there.
Somebody, I don't know if I've said this to you or not, but somebody told me, and I love these two things. Think about what it is. Do I have time for this? Do I have time for this thought? Do I have time for this? And how much energy do I have to spend on this? Managing our energy is how do you want to manage your energy? We only have so much energy in a day, in a week. And do we want to spend wishing Monday away, wishing the week away? I mean, Father Time is not a good friend. He speeds it up. And
Yeah.
we wish it away only to wish we didn't wish it away. And
And
how do we live more fulfilled on a daily basis with,
yeah.
gratitude? And what do I make out of this day? I know I went and got myself a cherry chai latte from Starbucks. I was like, it's going to be one of those days. I need it. What's your
As
reward
yeah,
if you
as
need that?
amazing and as much space, as much computer space as we have in our brains, it's still a finite space. So to me, the logical thing is we have X amount of space in our mind, whatever that number is. The more we fill it with positive, there's just less room for the negative. And it can start out as simple as, like with me with the movies, it was as simple as I'm going to go for 2 hours and distract myself. So I'm going to, my mind is going to be focused for 2 hours on the movie. That was as simple as I started. And yes, that certainly, if you distract yourself enough throughout the day, throughout the week, whatever, yes. But it also has to, you have to connect the dots between, okay, those 2 hours are gone and I didn't have any negative thoughts for those 2 hours. Okay, but now what? And now be intentional. And yes, you can start out by saying, I'm going to try a pottery class. And, I like pottery. Let me go try a pottery class. If that, however long the class lasts, or if you try for a month, for that period of time, great. You've now built upon the positive experiences in your life. And the more you accumulate those things, and there are going to be a million things, a million self care things out there. You're just, to me, and you know much more about the brain than I do, Cathy. It just makes sense to me. The more you're filling with positive, it's just less room for negative.
Mhm.
That just kind of, you
But
know,
we will put that switch back in a second to go to, because a lot of the negative thoughts there's some crazy number. The negative thoughts you have today, they're coming back tomorrow. They're coming
80% of the
back.
time, yeah.
So, you know,
But how the question is, and this might be the $1 million question: how do we get those positive experiences to repeat in our minds all the time? And to me, it's
it's intentional.
consistency, it's intention. If you're doing, look, I'm an extreme version of it because because
Maybe that's a good intention for the day to
I,
set.
yeah, yes, to I'm I go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week, and that's all great. And I go to the movie. Everybody's things are going to be different. But if you're, you know, be intentional and write down, try different things, and we all know the things we enjoy. We all know the things that make us happy. We all know the things that build, strengthen, and grow our mind. Body. We all know it. Yours and mine are different than everybody else's, but we know what they are. Do those things more often. It sounds easy on paper, and it sounds easy when you and I talk about it on the podcast. But
Well, and if somebody thinks they don't have time, because I think that happens to a lot of people, they don't
yeah,
have time. But what if there's nothing wrong either with saying, you know what, give me 10 minutes. I need 10 minutes, everybody. And then you go wherever you go. And if you're at work, maybe there's a small meeting room, or if you're at home, maybe you can go into your bedroom. Shoot, I've gone in my bathroom and shut myself in before. But it's like, it's okay and it's healthy, really, to sit with your thoughts, like to sit there and be like, just get it out. Just,
Yeah.
you don't have to have an answer for it, but just, and that's mindfulness, really. Letting the thoughts come and go. I'm really ticked off. This Orioles lost. I spent all that money and went to that
Yeah.
game. Waste of time and all that traffic. Like, whatever's coming, let it come and let it go. You don't have to really have an answer for it. Just let it
Yeah.
out.
It's funny how Kathy, like, if we're hungry, we eat. If we're thirsty, we drink. If we have a
Yeah.
headache, we take an aspirin. There's all these things that if that come along that are negative that we have an answer for. It's X, Y, and Z. If the X happens, then we do this. If this other one happens, we do this.
Yeah.
How do we get to the point where, and again, it's going to be different for everybody, but we feel ourselves kind of heading in a, and there are negative moments, and there's just a general negative mindset in general that people get. We all get. How do we learn to recognize when we're heading in that direction, and then take the aspirin, take the self care aspirin for that? Um, and to me, it's you know discovering who you are. That's such a to me that's so important with self care. Is you have to want to get to know who you are, because I don't care if you're 15 or 60. You haven't figured out everything about who you are yet. We all are discovering who we are the whole journey.
And changing along the way.
Yes. But we change because we experienced something we didn't expect. And as much as I like to stick to the same thing, that's been an eye opener for me. Is these new things that have popped into my life that I would have never expected, and they have become part of all the things that make up the identity of who Jay is, and the broader and deeper that well becomes, there's just less time, space, and place for the negative to mess that hub of the wheel up. Again, I have my moments, I have my days, just like everybody else, but you know, we can control. It's not easy, but we can control. Happiness is a choice.
Mm.
You know, it's not a switch. You don't decide. You don't wake up tomorrow morning and say, "All right, today I'm happy." It's not. We wish it worked that way. It just doesn't. But we can choose to move towards happiness,
And I think there's people that would say, but you don't understand.
and that might be true. I may not understand their circumstances for sure,
But I think
but
people use that as a block. I mean, I'm sure I've used it, but you don't understand. But
right,
how do we get past, but you don't understand? Okay. So does it really matter if like if I'm saying something to you, if I'm saying, Jay saying blah, 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 and I'm like, but you don't understand, you're not a mama for it and
right,
working. Well, you may not understand, but that's not, it's irrelevant, whether you
right.
understand or not. It's like, okay, but Kathy, what are you going to do to
Yes,
make this situation better for you? What are
yes,
you going to do to
yeah,
change your outlook? Do you want to just sit there and have a pity party for yourself and be miserable? Or what are you going to do to make your mind feel a little better?
yes,
May not be able to change that baseball is ending. May not be able to change that the Beatles are breaking up. I can't change any of that. But what are you going to do?
yes,
You going to have hope for the future? Are you going to be excited about what's next? Are you going to, maybe you want to volunteer to be baseball room mother. You know what I mean? Concession stand mother,
you
which
can be the scorekeeper next year. Yeah,
I'm not doing any of that, by the way. Um, but what are you going to do about it?
yeah,
So I don't know. We have to take some responsibility too. And I know, and I'm not saying people. I know there's people that are clearly depressed, and it's very hard to
yes,
get get the momentum and
yes.
to have that warrior type of attitude. But
The desired destination is the same for all of us. We all want to be happy, all of us. Now, how we get there because of our circumstances is going to look and feel differently. So, from that aspect, yes, I don't understand how it is to be a parent. You don't. Kathy doesn't understand how it is to be sexually abused as a child. That's not
correct,
right. That's not right or wrong. That's just
right?
reality.
It's a
Um,
fact. It's truth.
Yes, yes.
I
But
know.
there are some general rules, no matter what our circumstances are. and self care being one of them. Self care is going to be good no matter what your circumstances are. It
And it
just
doesn't
is.
care what your story is,
Nope. Um, so yeah,
right?
I think I'm glad that you brought that up because and I've been guilty of that, especially when I was younger. And in my mind, I would never verbalize it outwardly because
Sure.
nobody knew about my circumstances. But in my mind, someone would say, "Well, you need to do da 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 da," and in my mind, I would say, "They don't
They
get
don't,
it."
they
I
don't
wouldn't
get it.
say it because I would be giving away, I'd be talking about something I didn't want to talk about.
Well, but to give credit to give attention to that comment, I don't mean to say, yes, you felt like somebody didn't get it. And that's a
Right?
bad feeling too, when you think nobody gets it. But the important thing there is to find your anchors, find them, they're out there that
Yep.
does get it.
Yep. Well, they
That you
don't have to. They don't have to get it, but they
hold space for it.
yes, they're going to stand with you,
Yes.
even though they don't get it.
Right.
Because, and again, there might be, and through this journey, I've
Well,
spoken with
find
many.
them, right? Find those
Yes,
people.
there have been many other people that I've spoken with that have been through the same type of circumstances I have, but their journey's been way different than mine.
Yeah.
Every parent doesn't have the same experiences that Cathy has. There's
No.
not a parent. There's not one parent experience.
Well, and
There's
that's why there's no handbook. I mean,
right.
maybe there are books out there, but
So
there's no
as
handbook.
easy as it is for sometimes when we're going through it to in our even if it's just in our minds to say you don't understand or you don't get it. Um,
What do you
you
think
know,
the easiest thing is to do for people? So if people, honestly, Jay, what do you think? So if we're talking about negative mindsets, and we know we naturally have it, we know our brain tries to protect us, and it gets all defensive and whatever, acting up. Our brain does. What do you think is the easiest thing somebody can do? Like, just assume somebody doesn't have time, they can't be creative and think about something that they like or want to do. What do you think is the easiest mind shift if somebody's just in a bad mood?
well, look, you said something that everybody has things that they enjoy doing. Everybody, they're going to be different, but everybody, you know, you just you've got to
Change. So,
change your routine.
or
Change
get out. If you're right there and you're feeling awful, I'm on work pod.
change your
Well,
environment right
change
immediately.
the
Yes.
environment. Change the
Yeah.
environment, and it could be like 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
10, give yourself 10. Don't do
Yep.
5. Right?
Yep.
What about the grounding? What about grounding? I was reading something the other day about maybe you're not somebody that likes to take your shoes off, but how helpful it is for your feet to touch
Oh yeah.
the earth, right?
Yeah.
And then start with the senses. What can I smell? What can I see? What can I hear? What can I touch? That's nature. I guess that's where that tree hugging comes. You don't have to hug it, but go touch it or something,
Yeah.
right? Nature's is a big, quick healer.
And being by the water, we've talked about that.
Hmm.
Go. I mean, there's a million places around here you can just go sit in your car and just sit and look out over the water. Um,
Music,
music,
a song,
any kind of visual or
your
audio.
senses, something
Yes.
with your senses,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Take a hot bath. They're easy, simple. They're either free or very inexpensive. Um, look, and I think we both want to qualify all this by saying there are those that are going through some stuff that are
Right.
um, legit diagnosed
Clinical problem.
conditions. Yes,
Mhm.
that's not who we're talking about. Um, we all go
But I
through.
still want to say this because I talked to somebody else about it this week. That what our guest was it last week where she said, make sure to, if
Rachel.
you're having a hard time, to get your vitamin mineral
Yeah, yeah,
panel
yep,
and your hormone panel. I
yep,
I can't stop thinking about that.
yeah.
Like maybe it's an easier fix than somebody
It
might
could
think.
be an
The
internal
environment.
chemistry thing. Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
could be. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, your environment is the easiest thing. You can literally walk out of the house and you've changed your environment. What
Sit in your
just
car and
just get
cuss.
up, just get up and stretch. Get up and just stretch for 5 minutes, or Um,
Breathing, box breathing, take it
but
in.
here's the thing, Kathy, and here's kind of one of the big hurdles we come across. One of the pushbacks we get alongside of self care is selfish is that um, even if they don't want to admit, I think folks don't think about how important taking care of themselves in general is. There's a lack of understanding of, yes, I think most people understand from a physical aspect, I need to eat well, I need to rest to be as healthy as possible. But I think in the broader scheme, in the mental health, in the spirit, in the soul part of the trilogy, they're they're not aware. They've never thought about that. I think there's still some work to do for folks like you and I doing this podcast and others to keep getting the word out there about what these other things do that are not, you know, eating well and resting and exercise, which pretty much everybody knows those. But there's much more to it than that. Those are important, but um,
We need to make something, Jay. We need to make something. Have you, like sometimes people make. I mean, you and I talked about these these bands that say things. You
yep,
know, like this one that I have right in my hand right now says, "What are you grateful for today?" You
yep,
know, but that you can wear can remind you. Although I have
yep,
small wrists, so these things never work for me, FYI. But like Courtney Moore, our friend Courtney Moore, she used to make, I don't know if she still does, these they're bracelets, but they had beads on them. And then, we need to have something clever that's for self care. Like, okay, go around the
self care
beads.
isn't selfish. Yeah,
This one is hot tea. This one is a bath. This one is going outside. Maybe we need to write something on some beads, and it can go around and
yeah.
take your pick of what you want.
That's something we talked about before we popped on about. I was going to do something like that for the self care expo to hand out to folks, just some kind of general,
Some kind of reminder.
reminder. Yep.
Um,
Um, I think the normalization of the conversation around the not mental health being the big one that needs to be normalized more, but also the soul slash spiritual side of, and I don't mean spiritual necessarily from a religious
right.
standpoint, but I think the mental health for sure is not, it has like the physical part of the body part of, people's knowledge of taking care of their bodies is like light years ahead of mental health and soul of the three. It's
No,
so
I
it's
agree.
way ahead.
I agree.
um,
Shane?
but I will say this: having been a personal trainer and been around fitness for since I was 18 years old in some
Yeah.
capacity, there have been leaps and bounds in the last 10 years about what we're learning about the body that we didn't know 10, 15, 20 years ago. So, but it's easy to talk about exercise. Nobody's afraid to talk about exercise. Um, but there's that stigma about mental health, like we've talked about a million times. Um, and, you know, I think hopefully the Self Care Expo will, to some degree, hopefully showcase the variety of things that are self care that people might walk into the Self Care Expo and say, oh, I didn't realize that da 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 was self care or was for I'm hoping that's the experience. Sure, there will be folks that are all about self care and they're going to come out there just because that's their thing, and that's great. There, we need all the advocates we can get, but hopefully it's an educational 4 hours for folks to just be like, huh. I didn't realize that all this stuff was here locally, and B, it doesn't seem so daunting. I can do these things, and I can start filling my mindset tank with more pluses and less minuses. And I think my thought is, Kathy, for all of us, again, we're all different, but there's a tipping point in that negative positive mindset thing that if we get to, even if it's not 100%, that would be the optimal goal. No, there's no such thing. But if we're at 51%, then that tips it. So now you're you know, I've always said, let me get to neutral. I do that when I'm going through an anxiety spell where I'm at the
Okay.
bad end of the spectrum, and there's the opposite end of the spectrum, and then in the perfect world, I would get to on any given day where I'm just in a great positive way.
But
I
that's
try,
good what you just said.
yes,
But go to neutral first is what you're saying.
yes, I say, okay, I can't in this very second get from where I'm at to the
I'm
perfect. I
not going
can't.
to be skipping and singing right now. I don't want
Yes.
to.
Let me
But
get to
that's
negative.
neutral.
So I can see negative from where I am, or I can see neutral. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can see neutral. From, I can
When you see negative,
I can
run.
definitely see negative for sure. That's all I see. But I can at least see neutral. So let me that goal is attainable right here in this moment. Let me work to that. And usually I do box breathing, and I'll turn something on the TV, or I'll turn whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go for a walk up the street or whatever, and then I get to neutral. Where like my heart rate slows down, and I'm not I'm not joyous bouncing off the walls, happy Jay.
Right.
I wasn't gonna be that anyway. I wasn't gonna get to that even if I didn't have a bad moment or whatever. So that makes no sense to have that as a goal. It's not no. So and I feel myself get back to like, okay, now what? And my thoughts clear, and now I can be like, okay, now I can start rationalizing and start thinking about the situation as it really is and not how I perceived it, and then hopefully get from 50, which is the midway from 0 to 100, and then 51 and to 55, and yeah,
I like that. How to get to neutral.
yes. Like I said, I can see neutral from where, even on the worst day, I can still see neutral. At least now. There were probably days in my past where I couldn't even see neutral for sure. But now I can, and it might take a little bit. I don't snap my fingers and get to neutral. I've got to process, and I've got to do some things, and it may take an hour or two.
Maybe you sit with the thought and let the thoughts go and then get to neutral.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think you know, kind of specifically. Also, I want to touch on you know, I think our circumstances impact our negative self talk greatly. Our
Yeah.
excuse me, our current or our previous environment, whether that's a family situation or a bad marriage or whatever it is, a bad career choice, whatever, um,
Mhm.
impacts what we feel about ourselves. Um, we have not learned to create that strong enough sense of self that we can withstand those those bombardments of things, that those negative things are going to happen to us. We haven't gotten that far yet, so they stick with us. The Velcro sticks to us with all these negative things, and and as they build, the negative thoughts grow, and now you're, instead of being 51 positive and 49 negative, you might be 90 negative and 10 positive, and um, it's just we have to learn to not be so dependent on outside things that we can't control to for our happiness. Why would it makes no logical sense to take something we cannot control and hang our hat of happiness on that and say, I can only be happy if this outside thing that I have no control over. That's like saying the only way I can be happy is if the weather's good. Sure, a good sunny day can certainly help our mood, and a dark, rainy day brings it down a little bit. But our happiness should not be dependent on the weather at any given time. We can't control it anyway. Why? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that that one frustrates me because it makes no lot. My analytical mind can wrap my mind around that easily, but it if you're going through it, and if you've been through a trauma or going through a trauma, it's that's you're there, and it's yeah.
I'm looking at something else here, Jay. We kind of talked about this, like identifying the negative thoughts. Are you jumping to a conclusion? Are you making a catastrophe out of it? Are you labeling it? I should have done this. All the emotional responses, blame, personalizing things. But here's a couple things that this article is saying. Ask yourself, is the thought realistic? Is that a realistic thought?
Yep.
Think of what happened in the past in similar situations and evaluate if your thoughts were on course with what really happened. Actively challenge the thought and look for an alternative, or an alternative explanation. Like, is that really what it is, or could
Yeah.
it be this? Think of what you gain versus what you lose by continuing to think that way, and it's probably more that you're going to lose, right? Um,
See, that's where me getting to neutral. When I
yeah,
get to neutral, I can now rationalize my thoughts and say, is this real or is it my perception? So
right.
getting
Well,
to
you know what
neutral,
you're doing.
yes,
Consider what you tell your friend and might have the same thought. It's almost
right,
like you're saying, okay, is this
yep.
did I just catastrophize this, or is it?
Listen to your own advice. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's all good stuff. So that's a good way to transition into talking about what we've been watching lately because it has to do with this topic for me very much so. And we both went and watched on different nights. We went and watched Thunderbolts, which is the latest Marvel movie. And I'm going to let you talk about what you thought first, and then I'm going to talk about my kind of in depth, very personal experience.
Well, I definitely don't want to say anything that would give it away, but I think that people should, if even if you're not a Marvel fan, if you're somebody that just likes to go to the movies and wants a good story, I think it's worth going. If you're a Marvel fan, I think it's worth going. Do you have to have seen X, Y, and Z to understand this movie? No. Honestly, I went into this movie. Would I have picked it up? I'm trying to think. Would I have just gone to this movie? I probably would have had to hear somebody say, "Hey, that was good. Go to that movie," because I didn't follow the Thunderbolt comic stuff. I was vaguely aware of some of the characters in it. There are characters in there that I really like, and if I like a character, I think I am drawn to that.
Yeah.
Um, I was a big Avengers fan, so then I'm like, man, is this like the leftovers? Am I gonna really like this movie? But I did have that thought. I'm not
Well,
gonna lie.
they even called them the new Avengers in the movie. Yeah.
I know. But I'll tell you, I was pleasantly surprised with this movie because I felt like this wasn't a movie. I mean, sure, there was action. There's always action in a Marvel movie, but this was very much about relationships, and I felt like they did a good job with those characters of personalizing them with human, real conditions, or real thought process, or real loneliness, or real problems and traumas. And I was pleasantly surprised of how human these Thunderbolt misfits were,
Yeah.
and the real life lessons that came from this movie. And I can tell you, and Dylan, my youngest, who's 18, is one that's really going to think a lot. And after he saw it, he really did think a lot. And he's like, and him and I really had a similar discussion about that movie. And then he's like, I really could go see it again. It really meant something to him, that movie. I could see it again.
So yeah, I really liked it. I have learned that my my expectations for Marvel have to be lowered because I think the era of that big blockbuster impactful thing like the Avengers, the Endgame saga, and all
Right.
that. It's no one's going to ever do that again. So I don't think it's right for any audience member to go in thinking that the Marvel stuff is going to be to that. It's just not. Movies don't mean the same anymore. It's just not going to be that way. So I've learned to drop my expectations for Marvel, and you can tell Marvel knows this too because in a lot of ways, it's a scaled back version of the big, giant, grand stuff we've seen from them before. It's, but to
Yeah.
your point, it was less about the visuals and this big, grand, stuff we're looking at, and more about depth and story and people. And
Yeah.
so the character of Sentry, who's this, okay, let me ask you this: did you pick up on the Top Gun Maverick? Callback.
Did I? I don't know.
The
Maybe I
guy
didn't.
that plays Bob is the same guy that played Bob, the pilot, in the Top Gun Maverick movie. Same actor, same name, and he just said
Nope.
no, just Bob, just like he did in the Top Gun
I
movie.
didn't. I didn't pick up on it.
It's the same exact
No.
actor with the same exact character
Oh, but
name,
you saw
Bob.
it 25 times. That's not fair.
So I'll just say that. So they introduced this new, and this character is in the comics. I've never read a comic in my life, Kathy, so I don't know anything about these characters other than what I may read, in a review or whatever. So here's where it got me, and it really hit home for me personally was a couple things. This guy who had some struggles, and they did some scientific research on him, and they pumped him with these chemicals, and he has these he had some mental health issues going into this to these tests and all that the government was doing, and then he gets these powers and he has no idea, and he's trying to navigate that. But in this one part of the movie, he starts talking about the void, the darkness within him, the loneliness within him, and he we think he gets killed at one point, but he literally the void is separated from the rest of him. So there's this part of him that's this almost like an alter ego that's like it's literally a shadow of him. He is a shadow of himself, but it's the void, the loneliness within him. So there's that. There's this, and he keeps on saying to his other part of himself, we're always going to be alone. It's always just going to be us, no one else, just us. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm getting goosebumps and I'm tearing up because I'm thinking I was talking to the shadow of me for years for
Mm,
40 years. I was that dynamic within the anxiety within my own mind was that. It could not have been a more accurate depiction of a lot of my
I
anxiety
could
when I was
tell.
younger. Because
Hmm.
there was the void, the I'm only going to be alone shadow, just the shell of me, and there was the me who was walking around trying to get by.
Yes.
Who there was two parts, and that was the anxiety mindset fighting each other every minute of every day. That was me battling, and then when they start physically fighting each other, and he's like the realistic walking around every day part of him is literally physically fighting the other part. I'm
Mhm.
thinking that was me in my head. I'm like, it just. But then when like the other Thunderbolts are like he has like subdued them. They're like bolted to the walls and they can't move. Well, Yelena gets free first, and she says, because the void's saying we're always going to be alone. We're always going to be alone. Yelena comes over. She escapes and comes over to him and says, "I'm with you. You're not alone." And then one by one, the rest of them come over. And I'm getting emotional now talking about this. When they all came to him and stood with him,
Oh, yes. Then yes. And you
that gave him the
and
power to overcome his own void. Ah,
you know
that
what else
moment right
I
there,
thought?
I was done in the theater, Kathy. I was done at that moment.
And I thought this is the power of connection in people. That movie is about the power of connection in people. Like we can be there alone because of what has happened to us, but if we give it a chance and we trust, there's going to be others, and maybe they feel the same way about themselves in their lives. In
And
this
they all did.
particular,
They
and
were
in
all
this
misfits.
particular,
They
they're
all
all
felt outcast. Yes,
but together they were so strong.
they were powerful enough to overcome him, the void, the villain, the bad guy, whatever.
And lots of things really in the movie. So it was, I don't know, I felt like it was a good time for that movie. Maybe it's what we needed right now is
It
that movie.
it was so far beyond a superhero movie. That like that last 30 minutes of the movie, like I literally, I mean, I was
Yeah.
shedding tears, Kathy. I'll admit it. I was like crying, full on crying. Went like he's punching the void. He's basically punching his other version of himself. Like
Yeah.
and and the Void keeps saying, "It's always just us. We're always going to be alone." And
The
you know,
negative self talk. The void is a negative self talk.
yes, exactly. And you know, it. I was just it. It was
Yeah.
such a great representation of what at
How
least
to
my
overcome
experience has
something,
been.
right?
Yes, it was my experience with anxiety, and just
Mm-hmm.
it did such a. And look, I don't. That character was written in a comic book. I don't know how many years ago, but whoever did that, or if whoever the director is, if they manipulated this in that way, bravo to them. To show the the vulnerability of all these characters and how
Mm-hmm.
all of them in their own way were loners. None of them had like they weren't the Avengers, and like but they were thrust into the situation where the only way they could survive was to pull together. And you could along the way they didn't always want to do it, and sometimes they wanted to
It
leave.
did.
Yep, but they
Yeah.
learned. And but as I left the theater, I'm like, that character was not the villain. Julia Louis Dreyfus was the villain, really, in the movie.
She had a very
Um,
Cruella de Vil
at,
look to her,
at
didn't she?
least for me, because I felt sympathy and empathy for Bob and the Void. Sentry was what his superhero name was. And I'm thinking, because it just hit home for me. So he was a sympathetic figure for me. Although but you could tell he didn't really want to kill the Thunderbolts because they had helped him escape all that stuff earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So he was fighting them, and he didn't want to be subdued, but he didn't want to kill him either.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's and I think Julie Louis Dreyfus just something about her is just she irritated me on Seinfeld. So maybe she just fits as the villain.
Elaine.
Yeah. So yeah, like Cathy said, you don't have to be a Marvel fan. It's a man. It's such a life story, and it's
It's
about
a human connection story.
it's a connection story, but it's also about like today's topic. It's self talk and how we
Mm-hmm.
how we feel about ourselves and how we convince ourselves that we're lesser. And uh, they all did. We've got
Yeah.
this Red Guardian tried to like act like he was the positive, but he was so overcompensating, and
Mm-hmm.
they all had their own ways about being in their own loners and just
Yeah. Like,
outcasts.
think about the Avengers. One of them was a god.
Yep.
One of them, they lived eternally. What strength?
They
We're
were all
never
kind
going to
of
be
the
perfect.
they were all kind of in some way in a little bit of they were all kind of a bad guy to some degree in every one of the movies that they had been in previous, especially the Ghost. She was the villain in her movie in the Ant-Man. Like she was literally the villain. But she had a backstory. And yeah, so whoever if that character was written that way intentionally because of you know maybe whoever wrote that character had some life experience where he drew from to create that. And bravo if he did that, or if it was Marvel kind of taking that character and moving him in that direction, um, to
They did a
show
good job.
the internal battle of someone so clearly. I mean, they literally it was a shadow, and then there was the self part of it. It could not have been any more clear.
Did you hear how it did
It
at
did
all?
very well. It did very
It
well.
did.
I don't know the numbers, but it did very well.
And
But
I think that's going to be a movie when people start talking about it, others are going to go see it.
it's weird because my when I went, it was only about half full,
Yeah.
but yet the amateur was packed. I mean, which is great. I wish they're all packed, but yeah, it was. But it's funny at Marvel movies for some reason nobody talks during the movie. You don't see the phones going on. I think because so many people are Marvel fans, they're there to watch the movie. They're there for the movie. They're not there to be like, I'm just out for the night to do something, but I'm halfway distracted. They're there for the movie. So Marvel audiences typically are the most polite audiences for me anyway.
I
So,
did whisper a couple questions to Dylan. I'm not gonna lie.
well, that's that. If you whisper somebody right next to you, that's different than
I'm
literally
like,
having a full-on conversation and having your phone go off every 5 minutes.
I'm like, wait. I did have a couple questions. I need some clarification points there.
But yeah, I could definitely see, and that Marvel has learned when they're post-credit scenes, they don't give you a scene that shows what might happen next because they've
Right.
done that a lot, and then they don't make another movie. So they just did a silly, fun post-credit scene that doesn't really mean anything. It was just something funny. Um,
Well,
they've
they had
learned.
two, right? I think there was two.
I only saw one. I saw the one and left because I didn't. I'll have to look to see what it was. I can go back and watch it. I'll find it somewhere, or they'll at least tell me what it is.
I think there was two.
Okay. I just I figured they were only going to do one because of whatever. So,
That's where you get your phone out and Google it.
but you don't do it. But you do it in the car. You don't do it in there.
Turn. As Dylan says, turn your screen light down.
Well, no, you just don't have it on at all. Um,
I think that during credits it might be acceptable.
well, that's it's certainly better than smack in the middle of the movie for sure. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
So
can put your recliner down.
I'm trying to think. I started watching. I watched a brand new documentary on Netflix about the Vietnam War, and
Hmm.
I've learned some new things about that I didn't know previously.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's about it. Oh, I watched this show called Cheat. That one's really intrigued me too. It's couples where one member of the couple had cheated, and they go to this retreat, and there's actually a counselor there that kind of they do these exercises and they do different things, and they try to see if they can reconcile, if they can forgive the other.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of really I like the guy, and I've never heard of him before, and I don't remember his name, Paul something, but he's actually a clinician, and he's part of the show, and he does both the group sessions and one on one the couple sessions.
Mhm.
He says a lot of really common sense things to me, but it was very I really was drawn to a lot of the stuff he was saying because it's so it's so and um, Catherine Petzel talked a little bit about some of the dynamics and how couples um, deal with conflict and how they sort conflict out and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty interesting to watch, and it was 8 couples, and I think only 3 decided to give it a real go after the show was done. The other 5 said no, can't get past it, whatever. Um, and then some other drama along the way, so that was kind of interesting. So yeah, but the Marvel thing was that one kind of stuck with me, and that'll be one that I go back and watch for sure, over and over, because especially that last half an hour, I want to see the YouTube reaction videos to that. I need to turn you on to watching. I'm telling you, Kathy,
The reaction
once
videos.
you start watching YouTube reaction videos, you're going to go down a rabbit, and you can do it for anything. You can do it like pick your favorite songs and say reactions Rick Springfield or whatever it is, Jesse's Girl, and you'll
Yeah.
have people that are watching the video, listening to the song for the very first time, and they might be 25 years old. That's the coolest thing to me is to see young folks that listen to a song that I love, and they're like, "Man, I would have never thought so and so had such a great song."
Mm.
They love it. Or a movie that somebody Popcorn in Bed is a good one to watch because they she previews movies. Tom Cruise found her and paid for her to come watch the Star Trek, Top Gun Maverick premiere. Like paid for her to go see it because he saw them online. It's called Popcorn in Bed, two sisters, and they go watch. I just watched the one where she watched A Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, the baseball movie, and how I'd forgotten how like impactful that movie is at the end.
So these are videos watching the whole thing,
Sometimes they can,
or
which I
just
mean, you
clips
can
of
fast
it.
forward and do whatever. But yeah, they'll sit there and watch the whole movie, or they'll watch the whole music video or whatever. Music's a good one because you can pick whatever your favorite song is, or maybe there's a song that, or I did when I saw the Superman trailer that I love so much. I went on and watched a million reaction videos to that, and um, yeah, it's just you. I mean, once you do it, you're like, oh, this is so cool. Especially when it's the young people that they might be not like the same genre of music, not just because they're 25, but they might be rap fans or whatever. Um, these brothers that are like R&B and rap fans, and they're probably maybe 30, and they listen to Guns N' Roses, and they were like, man, they never heard of Guns N' Roses. They listened to Guns N' Roses and were all about it, and they were like shocked. I love that to watch people like discover,
That's
you know,
funny.
but it could be a rabbit hole because you can spend hours on
And
the
you're like,
same
it's like
song.
watching reels, right?
Yeah, but longer versions of them. So, but anyway, that's about it, everyone, for this week. We are glad you joined us. And don't forget, September 13th, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Talbot County Community Center is this Eastern Shore Self Care Expo. We hope to see everybody there. And thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, guys.